Good evening, everybody.
Everybody, and welcome to tonight's very exciting call with Landon. So what I thought we'd do actually is I'm going to do a quick intro because I really want to. And I'm going to introduce Landon a little bit and then let him introduce himself. So whenever you're watching this, guys, whether it's now, later, or whenever, feel free to ask questions. We really encourage you to make the use of this time and think of something that's really going to challenge Landon, like make him sweat, keep him on his toes. So to intro the call, guys, this is, like I said, this is Landon Porter, and this is a special one for me because Landon is currently coaching me and has been for what, 3 months? Mm-hmm. Is it about that?
Just shy of.
Yeah, it's about that, isn't it? Yeah. And I asked Landon, do you know, originally when I contacted you, Landon, I didn't actually have much of a agenda. It just, intuition, it just felt like the right time to reach out and ask you if we could have a conversation. And it came from me exploring myself, knowing myself, and then going full circle to, holy shit, I need somebody to help me implement this back into my life. And some of the things you were saying seem to fit that. And so that's what we've been talking about, which has been a bunch of fun so far. So why don't you introduce yourself on the bits that I've missed?
Sure. So in October of 1977, I'm kidding.
Kidding.
Right. I am working on myself and have been intentionally and consciously for quite some time. And when I decided to kind of relax my grasp on that about 18 months ago, things just seemed to like fall into place. So coming from that perspective, who I am, right in this very moment, I am who I think I am. And what I mean by that is the identity that I've either created or agreed to. And that comes from my background of I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a certified chef. I was a sales guy for 15 years. I've coached for about the last 4 years. And I'm in this really weird space of life's kind of a trip and it's all happening right this minute. And I'm here observing it and observing myself experience it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who and how I am right now. I live in Colorado in the States. I have a little bit different accent than both of you do. And I think there's a couple of cliches that really ring true for many of us right now. I think a lot of us are seeking something, seeking to be better ourselves or seeking to help other people or impact other people. And I think ultimately we're all essentially walking each other home. So that is the most off the cuff, different, interesting intro I've ever given to an interview.
Nice. We like it.
Cool.
What's really interesting is that when I first saw you, you were heavily into sales and marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a transition at some point, which was really obvious online from sales to marketing to what you're doing now, exploring the self, helping other people explore how they experience life. Mm-hmm. So what happened for you to want to change that? Like, what was the transition?
I never wanted to do the thing that I was doing in the first place. And that is, anybody that watches this that's familiar with my quote unquote origin story, this will be familiar. I was in sales in 2 different industries for 15 years. And finally, after like the 5th time quitting my job, I was done and out of it. And my wife and I were helping parents of preteens deal with their kids being on the internet, having access to all kinds of stuff they had no idea about. And this is going back 6 years now. My wife and I are both tech savvy. We've both been on the internet since before Google. And it's just something we fell into, right? So we were in that space. I had left my sales job finally for the last time, and we'd been doing the coaching parents of preteens for about 10 months. And I ended up buying somebody's Facebook ads course, and I got pulled into basically teaching people how to get clients. And there was a handful of people that I was helping because they were helping me, and 5 of them in 1 week and 3 days said, "Dude, you need to do this." And I was like, "Dude, no, I don't." And sure enough, within a couple of months, I had a Facebook group and business. Can't really see it. Sales Gorilla, Gorilla Army Nation, all of that. And it was one of those moments in life where it seemed like whether I wanted to do this or not, the universe had a different plan. And so I just kind of like dropped the resistance and went with it. And so I did getting clients without being salesy and the Sales Gorilla for 3.5 years, all the while knowing like I've been done with sales. My take on marketing and how to get clients and all of that, I'm like so over talking about it. And in the beginning of 2019, I just decided, cool, if not this, what do I want to do? And what it ultimately came down to is what I had actually been teaching and coaching people on. If you took the sales and marketing umbrella off of it, it still all fit. And it was still really ultimately what I enjoyed doing and wanted to do. So to really answer that question as concisely as possible, sales and marketing and client acquisition ultimately comes down to this statement: the most important thing on the planet are relationships. Therefore, the most important one of those is the one you have with yourself. And so that was the basis of how I taught people how to deal with getting clients. So if you take the getting clients piece of it out of it, and whether it's dealing with a spouse or dealing with yourself or dealing with fitness or whatever, it comes down to relationship with self. So over the course of 2019, I kind of unwound that business. My business partner and I are still really, 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 really close, really good friends. We both realized about mid 2019 that we just would rather do something else. Like this was cool, but it felt like work. And by October of last year, 2019, we kind of began wrapping up the business. And in January of this year, I opened up a new business, created a new brand, kind of started getting the map together of what and how I wanted to do this. And I've been playing with my crayons all year.
Love it. There was a bit there around, I think there's been some questions, so I'll come to those in a second if that's all right, just to keep on top of them. But that piece around client creation, when you really step back from it, it's about relationships. Can you say a little bit more on that? Just
Sure.
to help people know what you mean, because there will be some people that will listen to this and they will be in that funnel, the ads, they'll be in that mindset of things, which again, totally cool, right? But I want to hear what you've got to say about that relationship
Sure.
piece.
So my take on it comes from the perspective of the kind of sales that I did. So where I really started in sales was in real estate. And anybody who is familiar with real estate at all knows that you can work really hard to close a deal, help somebody buy a house or get a loan or whatever, and then move on from that and just keep getting new clients all the time. And there's a lot of people in that space that do a really good job of that and have an excellent living. Most of us, regardless of what term we call it, would rather not do as much work as we have to, right? So what's an easy way to make more money and work less? Keep those clients over and over and over again, right? In real estate, it's the referral game, because most people don't buy a new house every year, right? Some people buy a new car every year, but most people don't buy a new house every year. So how do you get more business from one person if they're not going to buy another house for 10 or 15 more years? build a relationship with them to where they feel comfortable referring everybody they know to you who needs to buy a house, right? So that was my first introduction really to referral marketing. And then I ended up I saw the crash coming. So in '06, I started looking for a different opportunity. And I ended up working for a company that sells, and they're still around. They sell financial instruments to businesses to protect them from other businesses. Everything from collections to credit insurance on a global scale. So when the economy got really bad for all of us consumers in '08 through 2010, it was really good for those of us in that industry because lots of money to be made, right? And eventually I got to the point where I wanted to do a lot less work. So I went from cold calling 300 businesses a day to about a dozen calls a month that were warm calls, referrals. And I just applied the same principles to it. So that perspective means this: whether it was forced or intentional, I saw the majority of the money I could make was on the back end, further down the road of a relationship with a client, and not when they signed up to begin with. Does that make sense? So from that perspective, what's important? Signing up a new client or establishing a long-term relationship? Where's the majority of the money coming from? By nature, if you sign up the wrong clients and you've got to deal with them long term and they're a headache or a pain in the ass, right? More money, bigger pain in the ass. Like, I didn't want that. So I concluded that this is kind of like marriage. So if I'm going to go through the work to bring on a client, I'm kind of like marrying them, because what's the point of putting all that effort into it on the front end if I'm not wanting to keep them around for years and years and years, right? So I started looking at that whole process from that perspective. And then what it ultimately came down to was me looking at myself, because at first it was like, who do I want to work with? What industries am I interested in? What kind of individual do I want to have to deal with when there's a fire to put out? Right? When their world's falling apart and they're in pieces and really difficult to deal with, who do I not mind getting in the trenches with? So at first it was all about them. And then eventually that led me to, okay, cool. So what about me dictates that's who I like, but that's not who I like? And I started looking at myself. And pretty soon it became pretty obvious that the more I honored me and what I preferred, the easier my life got. And eventually it had nothing to do with other people. It had everything to do with what I will and won't tolerate. That's where it starts. And then what do I prefer and what don't I prefer? How do I want to do it versus how don't I want to do it? And on and on and on. And people in the space of sales and marketing, specifically on the internet, to get me clients right now, bro, have this really hard time understanding the difference between that kind of selfishness and the kind of selfishness that I'm talking about. And ultimately it comes down to, if you're going to put in the work and the effort to bring on a client, like, put a little extra work on the front end to make sure that you want to keep them around for 20 years, because that's where all the money is. And more so than the money, everything else that comes from deep-seated long-term relationships. Things that money can't buy. Make sense?
Totally. Total sense. And there's a real what I'm hearing in that as well is taking your time. Like, really taking your time to build on that relationship. That's something me and Lisa talk about with people all the time. And we use that phrase slowing down, which doesn't quite cut it, but it's just that. Yeah, that relationship piece. Like, really caring, taking your time, getting to know somebody. I love that.
Understanding what your agenda is, right? Because we're all really intelligent monkeys doing everything we need to and everything we can to try and get what we want, right? And most of us, oh, I want to impact people and I want to help people and this and that and the other, right? But if you really break it down, what do we want? I want to feel accepted. I want to feel safe, and I want to feel like I'm worthy of love, right? And that shows up in all kinds of weird ways when we're going about life in immature ways, right?
Yeah. We had a question here. This is a good one. This is from Kate. I know Kate. This is a very Kate question. It's awesome. Landon, who are you when you're not seeking?
Who am I when I'm not seeking? I'm either exploring, adventuring, creating, or guiding. And in all of those cases, I am always being.
Does that answer your question, Kate? We'd love to know. It's an interesting one, that, isn't it? Because the question that comes to my mind is, well, who else am I?
Mm-hmm. I love that question too, and I answered it the way that I did with a little bit of snark, because one of the things that I've been focusing on the last few months is, if you remove the seeker from the human, what is the point of being human? Right? We're emotional, psychological, and physical beings here in this 3D space, this physical realm. If you take the seeker out of us, what's left? It's kind of hard to have the human nature without our need or drive or hunger for seeking. I don't think we ever arrive at the I'm complete phase here in this human space.
So we go
Who
to
am I
sleep.
who am I when I'm not seeking? Sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we wake up and off we go.
Right?
Yeah. What else have we got here? Sheba says she loves when the party said we're all walking each other home. She says she loves this so much.
That's actually a quote from Ram Dass.
Oh, okay. Is that something she can go and check out?
Mm-hmm.
Wicked.
Yep. He's no longer with us in human form, but he has an amazing Instagram account. His foundation puts out lots of his content on Instagram and YouTube. They even do a podcast, I think, with a lot of his old recordings. But we're all walking each other home, right? It's that thing. We're too close to our forest to see the forest for the trees. So us coaches utilize other coaches to help us see what's right in front of us. We're all walking each other home.
Love that. Could you, if you've got a spare hand, can you chuck that in the chat so people can spell it? All right. What else have we got here? Okay, love it. However, I would add only to see that we are already home. Yeah, it's kind of interesting in what we've just spoken about, isn't it?
Yep. There is no there. There is only here.
What else have we got? Bernard, it's nice to see two dudes taking the time to actually be, think, and reflect. We've got a third dude here who's being particularly reflective. And then Crystal said, nice response. Yeah. Kind of want to ask something around me and Lisa when as coaches, when we coach people and we're coaching coaches, and we have our own coaching clients occasionally too now. Well, we did anyway, but our focus, like you know, is on the school at the minute. People will have a hard time navigating their feelings, their experience. It's kind of like we said earlier. It's like I'm in this and I feel this, but I really want this, right? How would you speak to that for somebody who's in that space?
Well, it all comes down to it's all perspective, right? So the idea and the reason that I like that quote, we're all walking each other home, is because I think we're all talking about the same thing from different perspectives. Whether we're talking about it, meaning life, or business, religion, science, the point of all of this, I think ultimately we're all talking about the same thing from different perspectives. And this experience of being either a human having a spiritual experience or a spirit having a human experience, we only know what we know, right? There's this idea we don't know what we don't know. That's, I think, the identity's perspective. I think we have two main perspectives. We have our source perspective, right? Spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. Even if we're the culmination of just enough time and the right kind of chemicals, and here we are, this living thing that we're conscious of being conscious. Even if that's the case, right? We have this perspective of ourselves as to who we are and what we're supposed to be like. And we have these desires and these needs and these wants in life. We're always stuck in this paradigm. I have the life that I have, and I want this other life, right? No matter how grand this life is that I've created, no matter how amazing it is, if you're completely fulfilled and satisfied, eventually you want something more, right? What happens when you buy a new car, buy a new house? Within months or years, you want the next one, right? Our need for that, or our drive for that, is, I think, a better word, is because it's all based on experience. We don't really want the things. We don't really want the stuff. We want the feeling of it. Many of us in the Western culture have really never been taught how to deal with our feelings, what they are, what they mean, what they're for, right? And it feels real when we feel something, lack or frustration or imposter syndrome, hurt, pain, whatever it is, it feels like that's the truth. And we want away from that. And our drive, oftentimes misguided, right? Putting out the pain instead of having a different experience. I think a lot of us are trying to get what we think we want, and we're not really clear on what it is we actually want, which my take is a feeling or a state of being. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, I'd love to know if anyone has any questions on that. I mean, to me, what the question I think would come up is, which is, it has an irony, has a twang of irony to it, which is, how would I create that? How would I create that way of being? And I'm smiling because I know me and you have talked about this a lot.
Yep. So here's my take on the human being in short. We are this identity, and we are this source. And the way that I have explained this in the past is we've all played video games, right? So it's really easy to picture ourselves sitting on the couch with the controller in our hand, playing the character on the TV screen, right? So the one on the couch with the controller is source or God or higher self or whatever you want to call it. And who we think we are in this life is the identity or the character on the TV screen. With me so far?
All the way.
Okay, so as we grow up, we go through a couple of different phases: little child, adolescent, and adult. And those three, and where I kind of got this, for those of you that are interested in this, is transactional analysis, sales training, psychological warfare sales training. We all have an inner child that wants the candy in the candy store, doesn't care about how we're going to feel later. We all have the adolescent in that training. It's considered the adult, right? It's the one that says, what's this going to mean about me if I do or don't get the candy? And then the third piece, I call it the adult, that training calls it the parent, is the one that's there to make the decision, is this a good decision for me or not? And we're always constantly battling these three until we're not battling these three. And the difference in battling and not battling is integrated or not. If we've got an immature inner child ego aspect, we do all kinds of weird, stupid things. We want things for reasons that we don't know or we're not privy to. If we've got an adolescent ego aspect that's not mature, right, we act out in certain kinds of ways. Like literally, think of a little kid. How does a 5-year-old demonstrate their displeasure with something when they're doing it immaturely? They throw a temper tantrum, right? How does an adolescent do it? Insecurity, passive aggressiveness, right? All of that weird. And then our adult ego aspect, right? So these three main characters make up our identity. And how we figure out what it is ultimately that we want is to integrate those three, mature where they're immature, and go through the process of knowing thyself. Why am I that way? Why do I act that way? Why did that trigger me like that? Why am I not taking time for myself or making space for myself? Why am I doing all of these things? And almost always, it's to support this identity that we believe to be who we are. And we've got to uphold that, and we've got to like defend that. And as part of that identity, we've been taught and trained and programmed what it's like to be us, what it's like to be in the world, what we should be like, what we should want, how we should act, all of those things. So most of what we think we want is not even really what we actually want. Ask anybody what they want, and 90% of them will spend 10 minutes telling you all the stuff they don't want for 10 or 15 minutes. And rarely can they get really clear on this is what I want, this is why I want it, and that's what I'll get for myself by having that. And it's this process of figuring ourselves out to be able to understand what we actually want and why.
Yeah. I know when we spoke, I mean, me and Lisa talk about this actually in private, but also within coaching sessions sometimes. And it's seeing and this even a glimpse of knowing that this moment here is it's kind of a fresh one. It's like kind of a blank canvas. But within that, we have the echo of the other, the learnings, the feelings, the, like you call it, the ego aspect of the child, the adolescent. And when you speak to most people, you can ask them and they'll tell you something that's happened or an experience or, you know, so on and so forth. But what was really helpful for me, and I know for our clients, and certainly in my experience, is that just to know that those ego aspects are ego, then almost gives you permission to kind of look this direction and create something new. You know, like you say, there's no one here telling me what to do. Someone telling me how to feel, how to behave, telling me what to do. I get to choose. And that can be really empowering, is a good word, I think, but also some clarity, some freedom, some choice as to what happens next. Shirley said, oh, no, hang on, we got some more questions here. Kate, what's your real character that shines?
My real character that shines?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. What I've been working on the last 6 months specifically is understanding why I am the way that I am. We all show up as an aspect or a version of ourselves in any given circumstance, situation, encounter with another human, right? The idea of being completely transparent with myself as to what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, how I'm experiencing that. The character of myself that shines is the inner 5-year-old who acknowledges that he's feeling a certain way, right? So we've got these three main characters. This is what I've been playing with. When something happens and I'm feeling a certain way, like what age would that have been for me? Is that my angry 8-year-old? Is that my insecure 11-year-old? Is that my know-it-all 17-year-old? Like, who is it that's like speaking up right now? Who's got the mic or the talking stick? And me being present and aware and observing who and how I'm being and being okay with it and no judgment, that's really where I think my character currently shines is I see all my own bullshit, right? And I acknowledge it. And I'm not judging it any longer. I'm not kicking my own ass. Pardon the language. This is one thing we didn't talk about before we hopped on, but
Go nuts. It's fine. Be yourself. It's all good.
I'm basically a 12-year-old boy. If you put all of me together, I'm 12, right? With lots of experience.
And a beard.
My current, I think, overall character that seems to be the one who's kind of taking the reins is who I am in this present moment, regardless of who I've been up to this point. And that's an interesting place to be. It's freeing. I no longer have to uphold how I thought I was supposed to be 6 months ago or 10 years ago or yesterday. It is the ultimate choice because I can go, yeah, I thought that yesterday, but I don't think that anymore. And not have any like, oh my God, like, right? That kind of ties in with this. There's a lot of talk about ego death and right, like kill your identity, and that's all a problem. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about recognizing who we are and how we are and trying to understand why we're like that and creating the space to give ourselves what we actually need, which is why we're acting out in those ways. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Love to know what anyone else is thinking.
You and I've had a lot of conversations. You've got enough context.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it does. It does make complete sense. It's actually we've had a few conversations, haven't we, recently, Lisa, about talking to different coaches and different teachers about it's all pointing, kind of seems to be pointing back to the same thing, which is really just being you, being yourself. There seems to be this natural kind of, you can call it intuition, you can call it feeling, whatever that looks like, God, universe, yeah, whatever. Probably the first person to say God and then yeah, whatever, but you know, and that there's just that endless kind of energy that seems to move through us, and that is just who we are showing up as ourselves, and go follow that, you know. And to let everybody into a little bit of a secret, me and Landon were talking earlier, and we were having a coaching conversation. One thing that came up was that up until recently, I give myself space to just think, but lately I haven't done that. So what's less clear is that intuition, and that was something we explored, wasn't it? And it kind of feels like that's what you're pointing to.
It's all perspective, right? Life's hard, or life's really fun, or life's really easy, or I'm responsible or not. It's all perspective. Why are you acting the way that you're acting? Because you're operating from a certain perspective. What's caused that perspective? I don't have time. I've got to get this stuff done. Cool. Says who?
Lisa. Blame her. So, what else have we got here? Would it be possible to live without wanting? I love that question.
Now we get into the realm of labels. And what I mean by that are the words that we use. We all, the three of us here, all speak English, even though Lisa, I don't think, has said 2 words since we've started this. Here's the perfect example. The three of us speak English as a first language. We speak different variations of the language, right? I'm in a different country than you guys. The three of us use the same basic language, same alphabet. 70 or 80% of the words that I use every day, you guys both use every day as well. And there's this automatic assumption that we know exactly what each of those words means, and that we have the exact same meaning of what that word actually is representing. What I've found, and this is going back to the sales stuff, is that when we say the same thing, very rarely do we mean exactly the same thing. might have the same base meaning to the word, but rarely do we 100% agree on the exact meaning and the definition of the words that we're using if we take the time to really explore that. So, my question would be, when you ask the question, can we be free of wanting? What do you mean by the word wanting? What's the definition that you're using that from? Can I be free of wanting companionship with my dogs or my wife? I could, but why would I? Or do you mean the more common use of the question, like when we stop wanting and we recognize that we actually have and are everything that we want and need, then what's the purpose of getting more, doing more, being more, having more? What's the purpose if I'm not wanting it? So my question would be, which version of that phrase do you mean?
It's surely something to think about.
Can we? Of course. And most of us who seem to get most of what we want tend to have less of a need for the wanting, which is really just the recognition of the fact that we actually lack the thing that we're wanting, which creates a certain thought pattern, which furthers a feeling state, which creates a chemical cocktail that we are now being, and everything we do carries that energy signature with it. Recognize that you're in lack of something and you desperately desire something that you don't have. It's the fastest way to keep yourself from having it. It's also the fastest way to keep yourself from recognizing everything you do have.
I think this raises a really important point as well, that something that I heard someone say once is, don't believe a word I say. Right? And I thought that's really powerful, because we can often try and find the truth in what somebody's trying to say, but actually when we reflect on a question and say, okay, what does that actually look like to me? Have I ever known not wanting? Like, my body is always wanting something, like oxygen or food. My mind is always looking for something. I can honestly say the only time I have ever known an absence of wanting is when I'm asleep, in some shape or form of wanting. And so I think it's really important to remember to really explore your own experience, from that perspective as well. What else we got here? Got one more from Kate. We've got the time, we can squeeze it in. Can you say more on feelings and how you work with clients who have a very strong feeling?
Can I say more on working with clients who have a very strong feeling?
Yeah, so can you say more on feelings and how you work with clients who have a very strong feeling?
Sure. So the preface to that is my natural tendency is feeling. I'm highly emotional, right? I can think and I'm pretty good at thinking, but my tendency is to be emotional. The state of being emotional or driven by feelings is a coping mechanism I developed early on to deal with the experience that I was having in life. And so having strong feelings is second nature to me. Like, really, until the last few years, I didn't really understand how some people just didn't operate from that perspective, right? Highly driven and motivated by how they're feeling. It all depends on context. And really, to answer that question, it comes down to a couple of different reasons somebody's having strong feelings: physical, psychological, or emotional bodies have feelings. I can think my way into feeling a certain way. I can be dragged into an emotive state which causes feelings. I can do something with my physical body that results in a feeling. If somebody's having a strong feeling towards fear or lack or not being enough, right? that might be a feeling, but it's driven and motivated generally by what's going on in the mind. And therefore then can be undone by working with the mind and oftentimes working with the physical body, right? Sam, you and I were talking about that earlier today. You load up the human being to the point where they're having a strong feeling, that feeling needs a release, right? Generally, a strong feeling that's causing anxiety is worrying about the future or being anxious about something that's happened in the past, which isn't currently going on, but our really intelligent monkey brain can manufacture that tiger in the bush right now, right? Somebody's having a really strong feeling and they're dealing with something, they're essentially stuck. Their energy is in such a place where they can't think their way out of it, they can't feel their way out of it, they can't move their way out of it. And so generally what I help somebody do is recognize that right in this very moment, they're actually safe. The thing that they're concerned about in the future, regretful about something that happened in the past, isn't actually present right here, right now. And usually that will end up down the path of, what are you concerned about? Or what do you want to have happen? And going through a process, helping them understand what they actually want versus what they're worried might happen or might not happen, gives them a different, broader perspective on the situation they're actually in. So I don't know if that answered the question. Everything really depends on context. Another thing I should say, kind of going back to the client acquisition stuff, I generally weed out clients who are constantly with their hair on fire, right? Generally don't work with a lot of clients that have emergencies all the time. I, being a very highly emotional person, right, with the wreckage of the past that I've got in my own mind, being highly motivated by feelings on a constant basis allows us to not think when we take actions. And those eventually, when they're compounded, create circumstances and situations that are difficult to deal with. So I generally don't deal with a lot of people that are like their world's on fire right now. But I would say everybody has the ability to have strong feelings about something. Most of us just don't know how to deal with that. Putting it in perspective allows us to deal with it.
Yeah, I love that bit as well around feeling in the body, move the body. It's got to go somewhere, but yeah, there's something in there about acknowledging where it is. Use the body, move the body, shake the energy. Kind of like that idea. It's cool. And it's interesting, isn't it, how I was talking to somebody about this not so long ago, how every other animal in the world, once they've escaped a predator or they've, I don't know, fallen off a cliff or whatever, you notice them, they shake off the energy. But we don't do that. We just sit in an office chair and think about it.
Yep.
Just kind of cracks me up. So, all right, what have we got left? I think we're coming to an end, guys. So thank you all very much for your questions. We are going to stop in a second, but I just kind of want to say to you, Landon, is that knowing this group is for coaches to help them learn how to grow a business through relationships, through service, as well as really kind of working on who they're being in this world. What little nugget would you like them to know?
Regardless of what you think or have been told about you, there's actually nothing wrong with you. And there's nobody on this planet who can be more you than you can be. And that's what the rest of us are waiting for, is for you to just show up as who you actually are. And when you begin to do that, and you become okay with the fact that you're weird, we're all weird, and you just show up like that, the wrong people will find their way out of your life and the right people will find their way in. And if you focus on that, you won't have to put a whole lot of work into building your business. It will just fall into place. It's so simple and it sounds so foo-foo that a lot of people don't really think about it. The fact is, we're all attracted to stuff that's like us. We don't know what you're like if you keep putting this mask on and trying to be something other than yourself. It makes it really hard for us to make all those judgment calls before we become your client. You're weird. Get over it.
Perfect. Well, if people want to find you, where can they? You've joined this group now, but if people want to find you, where can they find you, man?
Dudei'tsagame.com is a thing that I'm building now, and I've got a group on Facebook as well. Dude, It's a Game. You can search me in Facebook.
And just making sure we haven't got any questions. No, people are just saying thank you. I love that. It resonates so much. Thank you. And thank you all. I thought I had to be proper. That's not me. Weird is cool. Love that, Kate. What a great way to end.
This is proper. My weird ass self.
Wicked. Well, thank you very much, man. I mean, we're going to keep you on, but we'll end the video. And yeah, lots of love, guys. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for your questions. We'll see you soon.